Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where every day is an exciting day to talk about the Claris FileMaker platform. This week has been a really epic week thus far, but the week has been pretty epic because Dick Hunter's been doing a lot with WebDirect. Well, some of you have been watching that. The WebDirect conversation has been very exciting. This week also had kind of a security bent to it. In fact, he spent so much time on security, we had to add overall more days to the WebDirect conversation. I'm going to press a button here that's going to attempt to show me the upcoming broadcast schedule, but it's probably going to hang because FileMaker's doing a backup, which it always does, at 1 to 2 minutes past the hour. So today's conversation is going to be on return ROI for developers. The conversation is mostly about you as a developer communicating the benefits of FileMaker to your customer or to a potential customer. It's very, very, very important conversation. So today is the case for FileMaker. Tomorrow is kind of an open Q&A day. We had some things we wanted to do, but we're just going to make an open Q&A because I'm going to be on the road. So tomorrow's open Q&A. Then Nick Hunter continues WebDirect. If you're trying to learn how to build FileMaker solutions where the primary client or one of the important clients is WebDirect, this is training that you should watch from day one. So anyway, so let's talk about this. So today is a conversation about return on investment. This has been an initiative that Claris has been working on. The short version of the conversation is that build good solutions, save your customers time and money, and then help them understand the money that they can save. And so we're going to talk about a couple real-world examples here. So making the case for FileMaker return on investment. So ROI, you can pretty much, if you can demonstrate high quality ROI in any endeavor in your life, like say hot air balloon Ken, who likes to party in hot air balloons, he says that he builds a hot air balloon and that because of all the awesome business that comes from that hot air balloon, that he makes that money back in a month. So say he spends $100,000 on a hot air balloon, which would be an expensive hot air balloon, and then he makes $50,000 a month from servicing that balloon and flying it around and speeding over air traffic control towers and all that sort of stuff. After 2 months, he's paid it back. $100,000 balloon, 2 months of flying around, $50,000 each month. He's paid it back in 2 months. Then anything beyond that is gravy, as we say. That's at least the phrase I've heard. It's gravy. It's a bonus. It's a cherry on the top. You're getting the benefit of your investment comes back to you. What you don't want are situations where you invest a bunch of money, a bunch of time, and it doesn't work out. Those are called failed projects. Every FileMaker developer at one point in their life or the other has been in the middle of a project that failed. That is how and why that happens. There's 100 reasons why that could happen. Mitigating that's important. We're going to assume from the point of this conversation that you're making a successful solution. This is whether you're a personal developer, like a consultant kind of person, or you like outside developer like me and Christian, etc., or you're an in-house developer like a lot of you. A lot of you are in-house developers, right? You might be contract, you might be W-2, but you only have one customer. Like Larry the Marine, I think minor league baseball, I don't know if the organization pays or hires him, but certainly one or more of the clubs pays and hires him to do that. So he's kind of dedicated to them. So that's what we call an in-house developer. ROI is important for all of us. If the minor league baseball people feel that they put $1 in and they get $5 or $10 back, they will hire Larry the Marine and have him do stuff until the day he dies, right? Forever, right? However long that is, right? He will keep going and keep going and keep going because they love the ROI. And that's an important part of this is documented. So let's go through the slideshow real quick. As a reminder, this conversation for all of you real quick is about most of your developers here. I'm expecting you to be developers. I'm going to give you some tips and ideas and bring this conversation, maybe surface the conversation to the top of your head. Christian's going to help with that. Any of you might be brand new people, intermediate developers, senior ninjas. You're going to lay that ROI on your customer, on your owner, on your manager, or whoever you're trying to get to, or maybe they come to you and they think, well, is FileMaker the right answer? So they've opened the door to the conversation, but you need to bring some ROI knowledge and the ability to kind of articulate that. It's so important. They're not going to hire Jesse because, and I'm not picking on Jesse, but Jesse has a nice smile and she's a pleasant person and whatever. They're going to hire Jesse because she has some FileMaker Kung Fu Ninja skills that are going to be badass, that are going to help the organization, okay? So that at the end of the day, so you have to help them quantify that. Some of us really suck at doing that, or we forget about it. And so I want to have kind of an open conversation on that. Margaret, if you want to help keep an eye over here, because I'm over here. But we're going to have part of this in the conversation. But from behind me, for those of you wondering about that, that is our $1,000,000, right? So I'm going to come over here like this. I'm going to aim like that. Maybe I can turn like this a little bit. So that is $1.1 million. There's 2 rows of cash here. It's not super real money, but it's real enough that the Secret Service got nervous with me when I bought the first allotment of it. Because normally they sell little bits to people for TV shows and stuff, and I bought legitimately like everything I do in life, it's large and Richard, right? And it's just over the top. And they were like, sir, what are you doing? Right? So
I thought that was my Christmas bonus.
yeah, your Christmas bonus, right? So each of these stacks, by the way, each of these is 50 grand. And so I got stacks of 50 grand. It's about $1.2 million. The idea at the end of the day really is for a customer, if they're going to, it really fundamentally, if I go forward on the slideshow here just a little bit, developers love to build awesome solutions. We also frequently hate to document our code to everyone here. I could point at everyone in here, and somewhere along the way, you probably haven't been commenting your code. Going along with that, developers hate to document anything, write anything down, because they're busy coding. They want to see it work. When they're done, it's Miller time. Have a beer, have a drink. We're out of here. And so developers won't, if they hate the document code, they're going to hate the document ROI. Both of these will save your Documenting your code helps you be a professional, helps you support the solution. Documenting your ROI helps your current customer and future customers appreciate how awesome you are. What is return on investment? Let's talk about that real quick. How can I improve my life, right? And the idea is that, and Christian, this is where you can start to jump in, but you have a customer. Let's talk about Bumperman, also talk about Big Valley Aviation. So Bumperman is a company that when certain people drive certain kind of cars and you back into and you hit, you don't really total the car, you don't rip the door off, you don't flip it 8 times in the air. Say you push into a tree or you a concrete barrier at 1 mile an hour because you're parking and you bounce and you scrape up the bumper or you put a dent in the bumper. Bumperman's a company that will repair that. They come out, they do this. The problem is they had some really old technology and a combination of paper. And so when they hired RCC, it was Garrett Debsky, one of the engineers, they put into it, I think, about $30,000 to $50,000. So somewhere between half of one of these stacks and a full stack. Then what happened, and almost immediately, they started, as people used the iPad to document what they were doing instead of doing paper, the data was saved to the cloud, to the server automatically. The back-end office could see that. And what happened is Bumperman figured out they could save about 15 grand a month. And that's an interesting concept. So so what is this for the moment? Let's just say they saved 15 grand. Okay, so I'm going to take this apart. 2 stacks of cash, right? And so they're going to save about this much if they put about this much into it on the front end. So $50,000 on the front end, you get 10 to 20 on return investment every month. And so some of you who are really awesome at math know that probably within 2 or 3 months, 4 months, the project has paid for itself, and anything after that is gravy. And so the question is, what can I automate in your business? What should your customers be automating? And so what ends up happening is, how do you sell it to your customer? How does ROI manifest itself? So less time to complete your work, which is what happened in the case of the Bumperman people. They would do a bunch of bumper work they would go to a car dealership, people bring cars back, they rent cars, a rental dealership or a new dealership, and the bumpers are all messed up. And so they would get in there and they would take pictures of everything, then give the owner of the car dealership a quote. The car dealership would then approve the quote. They would have to print it, they'd have to sign it, they'd have to fax it back. And then the people who were doing the work would do about 6 hours of car bumper repair a day. And then they would spend about 90 minutes a day to 2 hours a day doing the paperwork back at the office, because they would remember the 6 hours of work they did. They would document it back at home, because they had some sort of ancient mobile device that before, well, probably pre 1999. Okay, we're talking like the early 90s kind of stuff. So no operating systems that any of us would be familiar with, right? Very, very ancient stuff. So they wouldn't use it. They wouldn't. They would refuse to use the technology. They go home. They would type it up, and so what happens is that they do it all on the iPad while they're there. And what ended up happening is that they didn't have to replicate the work, duplicate the paperwork. They could do it. They wouldn't forget anything. They could leverage the photographs and things that they'd already done to create the estimate because it was already documented. And they end up not going home early to do the paperwork. So instead of working 6 hours on bumpers, they end up working about 7.5 to 8 hours on bumpers. And that's that much more work they completed. So it's less time to complete the task, but what that frequently results in is people having not having to work so many hours a day, or they work the same amount. And Christian, this is where you have thoughts on this, but they work the same amount of time during the day, but they have more billable hours, right? Does that make sense?
Well, I have a lot of companies that I talk to where this becomes like an area of concern, if you will, because people start to hear my job is going to be replaced by software. But like
How
one of
many
them,
how many times has that ever happened where we went in, we did ROI, and how many times did so the ROI is always there. How many times were people laid off, Christian? Have you ever seen that in your when you with one of
zero.
your customers? Okay,
And
I've
and
seen it.
that's
I've seen it once.
oh,
Once.
someone wasn't more valuable.
Whatever. The point is that everyone gets excited that they're not going to have a job. You're going to have a job, but you're going to do more work during that period. Does that make sense? You're going to do like I typically am always going at high speed about 12 to 13 hours a day. Not always doing FileMaker. Some of it's running around doing helicopter related stuff, but I'm always busy working on whatever I'm working on. And so I will always do that. Now I might do it more efficiently if I have FileMaker keeping me organized, but I'm still going to always work that because that's the way I kind of roll. Some people might work 12-hour days, but they really want to have an 8-hour day in a life and not get divorced, right?
And that's the thing that there's always something at a successful business that needs to get done. And so like Larry's saying, you're growing the business. And so one of my clients, they weren't worried about people getting fired, but as they didn't think that the automation mattered. And then one year they let me build a bunch of stuff for them and they're like, "Wow, we have all this extra time in the day." And I asked them, "You guys just twiddling your thumbs?" They said, "No, all of a sudden we
Hey,
started
Mark.
focusing on all these other things that we didn't think that we actually had time for." And so a lot of times what you're doing is either you are buying some spare time, or more likely you're allowing the high value employees to focus on things that are much more important than redundancy work or inefficiency work.
So it's kind of like that AI conversation, right? Like AI is here, it's going to take our jobs. Yeah, it's smart math, folks. It's not going to take your job. Okay, that's kind of the idea with this. So there's a couple good examples that we've had. We talk about it, but the big thing comes up is that and Margaret has a link to this. So Claris currently has a promotion that they're doing right now, or not? Well, kind of a promotion. I don't know. It's their promotion is not is to give you the developer more ammunition in the way that you help to try to promote the FileMaker platform. It's one of the things that's kind of, frankly, kind of good about it. So this is called the Mobile Tire Shop. And the short version of this is Claris made this video, and there's some other stuff in here. And they're in Australia. And so what they were like, hey, we should do this. How can we have FileMaker run the business? And so FileMaker is tracking the products, tracking the orders. The short part of this business is, if I jump to the end, is that they drive around in vans like this. See the van? That's a van. That's the front up there. Whoop, let me get my face all the way. There's the vehicle. And they will go to your house and change the tires on your car, right? And you can have, and so instead of you going and waiting for that to happen, they will come to you and do it at your house. Pretty great. The short version of this is that they go to your business and do this. They built it in FileMaker. So we have the link for the video. They also have kind of this conversational spiral development where they talk about, well, they talk about the fact that you start here and then this is the, your interface. And they built everything so it works great on the iPhone. And through FileMaker Go, and you can select the tire and what you want to do and log in, and then the people in the warehouse can see if they have the tire, and if they don't have the tire, order the tire, and it shows up, and then they schedule to come out, and where are you at? They're down in Australia here. They log in, they see the driving, how long it is to get there, how I should do it, the best. One of the things that we did with on other projects, and Christian's seen this with projects, is that you have to come up with the best route not to waste time. So you hit these people up on a schedule, but you also don't want to just like keep going back across the freeway and wasting time. You want to kind of hit people on the best path. So FileMaker can work with it through an API to get your most optimized path. Of course, doing that and then also making your schedule with your customer could be exciting, but the short version is that this was their business model here. And so then they would say, hey, it's time to schedule your orders here, time to come out and check things out, your invoice attached, please pay, and then give us a good review because they love us. So this is a link that Margaret has that she's going to post for all of you, that Claris put this together for all of you. Once again, the idea is that you as a developer are already helping your customers. So find out as you solve problems for them, what is the net benefit to them? Can you put pencil to paper? Well, it took me 8 hours a day to do this job, and I've had a couple of people say, well, now one person does it. 2 people did it in 8 hours. Now one person does it in 2 hours. That kind of ROI is crazy great. That's really nice. It's hard for anyone to turn down a FileMaker project with that sort of ROI on it. So another link that we're going to give you is Claris also dropped this out here. It's not really directly attached to this tire project, but they both kind of came out at the same time. These are the things that you could 50 ways to use FileMaker. Okay, it's another good little PDF that's available. You can track, do this, do that, fulfill orders, all these are good ideas, right? Log flights and keep track of jet maintenance and repairs. Yeah, sounds like Big Valley Aviation. They do jet helicopters, right? So, but they don't check.
If I could chime in on that real quick, Richard, I think since we have a lot of developers listening to us, and one of our jobs when we're good at it is helping to identify these places, because our clients they know some of their pain points and where they can get efficiencies, but they're not aware of all of them. So you kind of have to listen well and learn to make those recommendations to people. Some clients are going to be really receptive to it, and other ones you kind of have to work on them a little bit. The client that I mentioned that we added all those efficiencies to, they were a little resistant in the beginning because, like with that client, it was like, hey, why don't you guys want a button to do this? And they're like, well, it's not that hard. But after getting them to do it and do a few others, they're like, we want more of these things because it makes our life easier. So my point being, sometimes it's our job as a developer to identify those places and help people see it. It also makes you really valuable because your clients know the things that you do that save them money, and then you become instrumental to that project. So I just want to make sure that people are thinking about that when Richard shows these good ideas, that part of it is about us bringing it up to clients to think about. That's why they hire us to develop things. We know software. They know how to put tires on the cars. Let's help them figure out what those efficiencies are.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's why back in the day, we came up with the $1 million over there, because people had a hard time viscerally understanding that if you're going to save this money, what does it even look like? I mean, people say, I'm going to save you $10,000 a month. And you start to stack those things up, and people's eyes get most people don't run around and play with stacks of cash like this. It starts to pile up, and you realize that becomes a measurable thing for your business. It's really kind of a big deal. So, but and that brings up a good point, is that some developers are good at selling. Like I remember Mike Wallace was always, and I don't know that he's here today, but he was. Mike's an interesting guy, but what I will tell you about Mike is that he's quite good, like you, Christian, about saying, hey, since we're doing this, why don't we do this other thing too, right? And I guess the trick is, if you're going into a business for the first time, you want to show high ROI. And I did this with Big Valley Aviation with them. I tried to find the lowest hanging fruit. So can you describe that idea and concept, and what is low hanging fruit?
I call it wins sometimes. So I have a couple newer clients right now with bigger, ambitious projects. But the problem is those things take a long time to get to. And so we want to have wins along the way. So while I'm working on that, I try to find that low hanging fruit. So like I had another client I started with, and they wanted me to build all this other stuff, but I noticed that the way that they added line items to their portal is they would go to another layout in table view, find the ID or the SKU, and paste that into the portal.
For real?
And I said, yeah. And I said, why don't you guys, don't you want a little button that would pull up like a list, like a picker? And they said, oh yeah, that would be great. Or if they wanted to find a purchase order, they'd open a window and go find it. I'm like, don't you want a go-to related record? And so while I'm working on the thing that's going to take me a lot longer, along that way, I can come and bring them those wins. Hey,
Yeah,
look, I've got you this quick, and that's the low-hanging fruit. But it,
quick win, the quick
yeah.
wins. Yeah, yeah. And that's what I remember talking to Claris Marketing about that, and that's a terminology they laid on me the other day. Quick win, and I'm like, okay, yeah. So the idea is because this is also as a developer something you should be thinking about. If the customer is paying you money and paying you money, and you're building, and you don't have really anything to show them because what you're building is like the wiring inside the space shuttle, right? They want to see the space shuttle fly or or Elon Musk rocket fly, but you're wiring up under the dash so someone could push the button so it works, right? They don't give a shit about the wire. They want to see the rocket go in the air. So you need to have a way of showing exterior things on the rocket that you're building while also articulating to them maybe.
You gotta do as Nick would say, you gotta give them some sexy things. And I tell people this too, because I like to work on the relationship graph. It's one of the things that I've become very keen about in the last few years. And so when I get these new clients, I look at their graph and I go, I need to spend time on this, but it's not sexy. And I try to tell them that up front. If I do my job correctly, everything is just going to work the way that it did before. So that's where I want those low hanging fruits so that I can at the same time have some bells and whistles along the way. The other thing too, you just made me think of that it's really helpful with is the more things that you can touch in the database, the more familiar you get with their business practices and the database. And all of a sudden you can suggest things that you might not have thought about. I always put myself in the mind, if this were my business and I was using the software, what would I want to get out of it? And I try to pitch it that way because it very much is genuine at that point. And it helps you find things that you would very much want in your own software.
Yeah, it's one of the things that makes the FileMaker community the way it is. It's kind of unusual, but you got a lot of creative types who like to do really great things. And one of the tricks is if you're going to build a solution for a business and you're not an expert at the business, like for example, when I started with Big Valley Aviation, I knew that people turn wrenches on a helicopter like they turn a wrench on a car, but what is that really business about? And me being down there and experiencing it in person allowed me to learn. Being part of the organization, at least like where they see you and they feel like you're part of the organization and you care about them. Christian sometimes will go on site or likes to go on site to a customer, right? And we can't always do that. In the old days, that's the only way we could do it, right? It was hard to work on stuff remotely. But being part of their team to the point where they give you their company shirt and they invite you to the company retreat. Garrett with that Bumper Man solution, he saved them so much money. They brought him they paid him to go out to the company where all the bumper mechanics got together from around the United States. There were over 100 mechanics out there and they were all part of that. And Garrett was part of the team. And Christian, you've had that too happen, right?
I'm staring at their stuff right now. I have a client, the one that I did all the efficiencies for, they bring me down to Southern California every year, and I've got shirts and bags and swag from them. And I like repping it actually. I feel a part of the team, and whenever I see them, I'll try to throw their company shirts on to remind them that I'm a part of their team too.
Yeah, which is really exciting. So it allows you to learn. So that's the cool part about this job. If you want to learn new things in life and you don't want to be bored, then part of this is turned into a FileMaker consultant. You want to be a consultant for FileMaker, but that's why we do what we do. We're learning new things. I'm learning new things. That's educational. I spent a week learning the pawn shop business back in 1990. My second customer was a pawn shop where you hawk your toaster, your TV because you need some money for whatever else, or you steal someone else's toaster or TV and then you hawk it for cash, right? Which is not supposed to happen. I spent a week there working behind the counter like one of their employees, just trying to understand how the business worked. And there's all sorts of little, it was very educational. I enjoyed it. I tremendously enjoyed it. But then I also could see, like Christian says, oh, look, this is really inefficient. You're doing what? You're doing it by hand? We should put it on a printer. And of course, back in those days, it was a dot matrix printer. Back and forth. Oh my God. But yes, very fun to learn that. And to give them suggestions and give them, and once again, mix your suggestions with easy wins or low hanging fruit, things you can accomplish quickly so they can see the benefit of what they've invested in, but then also with an eye towards the big picture stuff, right?
Yeah, with that client that I did the efficiencies for, it started with a couple small things,
Mm.
and then they were addicted. And that's when all of a sudden you can start showing them a lot of the bigger things. Because what you have to keep in mind is with these organizations and businesses, they may have been doing the thing that they're doing for a very long period of time.
Oh,
So it becomes normalized to them. And it's
yes.
it's not until an outsider like you comes in and goes, you print out 500 applications and sort them into 4 piles alphabetically and are swiping a credit card. Why don't we put this on an iPad, search their name and take a picture and check them in and but to get to that point sometimes is like, let's have a button that spits out a report the way that you want it. Um, and then it's really easy to start building from there. But that's why you have to make those suggestions. I don't know how many times I've had a client go, I never thought about that. And they can be real, and sometimes it is those small hanging fruits that are the biggest wins. Because think about the tools that you have out in your garage. I've got one to take the faucet off under my sink. Very valuable tool that I'll use once, maybe every 5 years. But
Okay.
hopefully less. And then you've got your other things that you use frequently. If you give someone a button on their screen that they're using daily and saves them a couple, like one of my clients, Scott, as you know, Rich, he counts clicks. And I bring that up to other clients. How many clicks can we reduce to improve the efficiency? So he inspects medical equipment, and by switching from carbon paper over to iPads, they're able to do 4 times as many assets in a day. And that's real savings or real money right there. And then one other thing I was going to mention too, that's kind of the opposite on this, and I want us to stick on the ROI, but you mentioned the low hanging fruit. Then you also have to identify high hanging fruit that has low value. And so I use this in a couple different ways, but it came up just this week actually with a client. When you were actually down at our office, Richard, I was talking to them. A client is switching from something old to something new, and they want these financials to calculate between the two of them. Well, I got to a point where I realized this is really hard. I love it. And so I always give this analogy to people, and I say, look, I love solving puzzles, but some puzzles are really expensive to solve. And I need to make sure from you that that's a puzzle worth solving. And so in the same way that we want to do things that give people high value, also try to avoid doing things that cost a lot of money with low value. And so when I phrase it like that to people, then it's good because it protects me if it takes a long time and they agree to it, or it gives them the opportunity to go, you know what, let's pivot. How about it just calculates the new stuff and we don't worry about the old stuff because it's going to go away anyways. So try to determine the high value versus high cost items, because ROI isn't just in making more money, it's in saving your costs.
Yeah, and so let's talk about a classic one that comes up about every 5 days with at least with our tech support is QuickBooks integration. A classic.
Yeah, that's a
In
that's a good
fact,
one.
it's one of the biggest ones out there ever. And I understand people don't want to deal with QuickBooks because, frankly, QuickBooks sucks. It's just not good, and it drives everyone insane using it. However, it is an accepted and as official as it can be accounting program that the accounting firms, the CPAs, the lawyers, even at least the U.S. government, they accept that as being like the gospel of officialness. And if it's in QuickBooks, generally it's deemed to be accurate and real and not some weird shenanigans kind of tax stuff. And so the problem with that is that it's a classic case of someone who has like Big Valley Aviation. They come to me and they go, well, two discoveries, and then make sure I don't get too far off the topic. They called me yesterday. They go, Richard, we've had a discovery. And I go, what? They go, well, we've been putting all the stuff that we do on people's helicopters in the computer, and we realize that we haven't been billing for a lot of we do because they do it during the day. It's like what I tell my engineers: log your time on your projects every day. And they like will put it on a post-it note or forget about it or something, and then we have no idea what they did on Tuesday for 2 hours, right, in the morning. And this customer, instead of doing work on the helicopter, then 3 or 4 days later going to FileMaker and typing it in, they are or writing it down somewhere, having them enter it as they go, they figured out that they were under billing customers anywhere from 25 to 30%. And so I don't really think about the idea of maybe you're not going to lose the data or you're going to lose what you're doing and that you're going to retain it and it's more accurate. And if they had a photo of it or something, I'm trying to get them to also take photos. Like there's a crack in the helicopter, there's a crack. Okay, and they're like, we're going to fix it. And I'm like, dude, did you get a picture? And this is the 70-year-old who's been doing it this way forever. Why would I get a picture? I said, you want to show before and after that A, there was a crack, and B, you fixed it, right? Oh yeah, good idea. And then he forgets about it and goes off. So that's all part of what we do as developers, trying to help them find the happy place in their life. Well, they call me and they go, we're going to bill a lot more because we're actually using FileMaker to track all this stuff. I said, it was an unexpected ROI moment. And of course it makes sense, right? If people who are horribly disorganized and they become organized, suddenly they're going to find their keys to their car and their phone that they misplaced 5 years ago, right? The other one is that they were saying, well, the finance lady is taking data out of FileMaker, and before she would have to get pieces of paper and then she would transpose it from the paper into QuickBooks. Now she's at the point of copy, paste, which is infinitely better than typing it from scratch. However, you can see where this conversation is going to go. And I said, well, someday we might want to automate that, but you need to be doing more than 20 invoices for the month, right? Their invoices are all $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 invoices. It's not like a bunch of $5 invoices. It's all big maintenance on big expensive. So should they really want it? So when that comes up, Christian, they're going to say, hey, can we automate it into QuickBooks? And what do we say to that, right? What do I as a developer say to that? Pretend I am Foxy Jack, and I'm trying to figure out so Christian, how should I explain that to the customer?
I mean, people ask me about QuickBooks integrations all the time, and to date, I've done 0. And the reason for that is the high cost to get it integrated. And so with one of my clients that's been on their wish list for 7 years, it's always kind of become, well, is this your highest priority with the budget you have? Is this what you want to work on? And are there maybe some other alternatives that would help you get what you need out of FileMaker into QuickBooks? Now, if it makes sense, let's do it. But I want to make sure up front they have a good idea, Foxy Jack, of what that's going to cost to do that integration, because there is a high cost to get it off the ground.
And the cost in this case is not just setting it up, but the cost also includes you having to adjust FileMaker and how it does its math, because QuickBooks does math slightly differently.
Like per line item versus the total.
Yes, yeah, the way they calculate taxes, and it can cause 5 cent, 10 cent, 20 cent deviations. But I can tell you that most accountants I'm like, hey, if it's within a buck, good, bro, just go with it, right? But accountants hate that. If it's off a penny, they hate it.
Has to balance.
They're insane about that. So first you have to tweak FileMaker, then you have to program FileMaker to talk to QuickBooks, which you can get some help with that. But then you have to figure out your workflow in the organization, and you have to spend time. So you have to take time away from your day job to get through this, which brings. So that right there is a grenade. Margaret, I don't know if I have any grenades in here. I need a grenade. A grenade is you're desperately working really hard. You have stuff you're trying to do. And I need to stop doing my day job. It's the BVA people, classic. I go down there to force them to deal with me. Because if I just call them, they'll like, oh, that Richard called, right? And they'll like say, oh, we'll call him back in a couple days. And I don't hear from them because they're on top of a helicopter, wrenching and greasing and doing all this stuff. And so the idea is that they have to stop their job and stop what they're doing to talk or work on FileMaker, to test FileMaker. And they're so busy they don't have time to save their save themselves. It's like if you were swimming and it's a flash flood and you're in the middle of the river, your car goes, yeah, I need a grenade. One grenade, right? Pull pin, pull the pin. Now I got to
Oh,
hold
there
it.
goes RCC.
No, here's the pin. I pulled the spoon. I got to hold it. Now, if I let go, I'm screwed. So this is what it is when you go to the customer because they are busy working. And imagine they're in a flash flood. They're in a car and the car's shot, right? And they swim out of the window and they're like in Los Angeles happens every year. And the helicopter's trying to rescue them and the firefighters trying to rescue them. And they're like, I'm too busy working on my job to swim. I'm just going to sit here on my iPhone while I'm going down the river, floating down the river. Water's coming over my head, and I'm still texting people because I'm doing my job, and I should be swimming to save my own ass. And that's not Richard being mean. That is every customer who really needs to hire a FileMaker person is already in the water drowning. They're already there, which is another problem. Christian, do you want to address that one a little bit while I put the pin back in the grenade?
With people already underwater?
Well, think of okay. When you get hired, let's say by CISA, okay? Are they like, things are so and so great right now. We got all sorts of time. And then, but Christian, we want to hire you to spend $100,000 in building a system. Do those two things ever happen together?
Not very frequently. Um,
No. They're already in the water, drowning, and they don't even have time to swim to save their own lives.
and I mean that's I tell it to my clients all the time is they're trying to run a business and talk to me and like I appreciate that struggle. One of the clients that I had listed, I was going to kind of mention today loosely, and maybe would chime in on here. He was drowning, but none of us are going to feel very bad for him. So he works in the tax industry, as I'll say, and he makes a very nice receipt for the IRS. And the sky is the limit in terms of revenue. But the issue that he had is he's in Excel doing these complicated reports. They're like 10, 20 plus pages, and he could only get maybe a report out every week. But he's got tons of people who want the reports from him. So he comes to me, and the problem is he needs to build the database so that he has the time to do more reports, but he's also building the reports. Now, oh, go ahead.
No, yeah. So he's busy. He probably doesn't have time to return your phone call, right? So
he's traveling around the country. He's got business owners.
What does he do? What does he do? What did he decide to do?
I mean, he wanted to fly out to Los Osos and sit in our office for a few weeks, but he did eventually carve some of that time out. The reason I was going to use him as an example, he is the only client in a non-derogatory way refers to my time as cheap. We've been working together something about 5 to 7 years. He's spent $63,000 at RCC. Now, his issue when he started was, I can only make one report a week. And I forget what his monthly revenue was, but now he's making $60K a month. So by investing, go ahead.
Well, it was probably 10 or 20K. It probably was pretty low.
Well, initially, that's all it was. Now after he got something, so now his big issue is he won't send the client the report immediately because he's afraid that people know that, I call it the money press, can spit these reports out in a couple hours. So he sits on them for about a week, but he's got all this extra time because now the system can actually produce these reports. He's got an employee helping on it. So now he's figured out there's other ways to actually make this more robust so that if one of his clients ever is audited, he can point to all of the case law across the country that protects them. And he can go find more clients because he's only trying to get 1% of the marketplace. And he can go, as he puts it, get a yacht and get pushed around by, younger girls in his wheelchair, because he's a little bit on the older side. But that's a perfect example of
what he's like 80 in a wheelchair. Oh my God.
I think he's up there, but
well,
$60,000 investment.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I was just thinking about some of the people here. I mean, a lot of people here are 80 years old, but I don't think they're in wheelchairs. At least I don't think they are.
Maybe not making $60K a month. If you are, my hat is off to you.
Congratulations on that. All right, cool. A lot of you have seen this before, but getting some conversation, getting some guidance, getting some suggestions, reminder to document the benefits your customers are getting. for a number of different reasons to help you sell more stuff. If you bought something, you can help remind them of all the stuff you've helped them save. So they don't already just remember all the negative stuff. Once again, if you have a very high expensive item with a low return, like for example, if someone loads 10 invoices into QuickBooks, and I'm talking simple one-page invoices into QuickBooks a month, they can spend 5 to 10 grand getting that set up, or they could just do it by hand and be done with it in an hour or 2 hours. And so, do you really?
And that's and maybe like for one of my clients, advanced calibrations that wanted to do QuickBooks, they even came up with this on their own. I've lots. They're like, well, what if we just exported it to like Excel or made a PDF and then we'll attach? You find little workarounds that allow you to do the task still a lot faster, that are maybe more justifiable to what it is that you're trying to solve. And that's I always tell people it's my job to offer solutions or ideas, or you always want to tell spaghetti's done, I guess you throw it at the wall. So I tell people it's my job to throw spaghetti at the wall. It's their job to be the wall and tell me what sticks. What ideas do you want?
That's
And
good.
so, and this doesn't work with all of my clients, but Cece, who had brought up, they kind of have a very definitive start and end to their season. And so at the end of every season, I like to do a debrief with them where we get together and I have them tell me, hey, what worked this year? But almost more importantly, what didn't, or what do you feel like could be better? Being open to that criticism allows you to find things that are better. But it is helpful when you see the things they like, because sometimes you'd be surprised by the little things that make people's lives a lot easier. Oh, I hit the return key and it actually takes me to the next slide. Like little things like that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. Well, it is Thursday. Tomorrow's going to be open Q&A. Do we have any other questions or comments about this ROI conversation? So Margaret has posted the links to the PDF on here. Once again, this is ammo for your Nerf gun, of your justification gun that you're going to use with your customers, right? You need bullets for the gun. This is more of that. Also, the tire shop video. There's actually a video in here where they talk about what they did, how they did it. It's kind of a Claris thing that they put in and talk about it. And it does this and it does this.
We're saying, oh, we need that for the call center.
So all that's in there, right? So that's material that Claris wants you to have.
I know we have developers in here. I don't know if you guys are all working for companies. Some of you are one-man type shops.
A lot of them are in-house people, yeah.
Yeah, it's like about a third, or maybe up slightly, but about a third of my clients are actual developers. I think that I'm more unique maybe at RCC in that the majority are still businesses, but I do coach a bunch of developers. And one of the developers that I coach, I'm always kind of amazed by the entrepreneurship, I don't know if that's the way you say that, of certain people, where I wouldn't necessarily and I'm good at going out and talking and selling, but this guy, he lives in a somewhat small town in the East Coast, North Carolina, and he will go to like local businesses. So he has a back during COVID, he would go to his local diner, and he noticed that they're having issues with their menus, especially reprinting them. They were old. And so he went up to them and said, why don't you guys do like the QR code? And so we actually made a menu builder in FileMaker that they use now. And I think they still kind of print it, but it allowed them to more rapidly do that. And that was because he went up to them and said, you guys could do this. He went to one of his local tire shops like that, and then sold them on the idea of tracking their bays and making them more efficient. So for those of you who are maybe one-man shop, if there is anyone out there, don't be afraid to go out and talk to some of your local businesses. You might be surprised. He's also actually done it with, this blew me away, campgrounds. So he has a reservation system that he uses for like summer camps and whatnot. So wow. Always really kind of impressed the people that go out and shore these things up. He's not getting $1 million client necessarily out of it, but he's doing well for himself.
Good. All right, cool. Good conversation. Return on investment, making the case for FileMaker. You can make the case if you have evidence, or you can document the return on investment. The conversation becomes much easier, right? Whenever I go to Claris and I say we should do something, they always ask me how many more millions of dollars they're going to make if they do something. Like, Richard, if we let you in the building, how many more millions of dollars we're going to make? And
real millions though, or fake, or combination?
Oh, real millions, right? Because they're about $100 million a year company, plus or minus. And so the rub is the question is if I'm doing a live stream and educating people, then how do I guarantee that Larry the Marine or Jesse or Labo or Scott or Tom or anyone is going to go spend more money with FileMaker. That'll, it's sometimes it's really nearly impossible to document ROI if it's way down and you can't tell what you did to affect people, right? Like Jesse could be at the local, convenience store and getting a lottery ticket right now, but she's watching the show. If she was there getting the lottery ticket and she won the lotto, she would be much better off than watching the show with us. So, how does having the show change people or us doing this kind of stuff or having starting point that's free? How do you document that? Well, I can't. And then Claris goes, well, Richard, since you can't document it, kiss our right? Which is the short version of what happens. It's really hard to document stuff. Sometimes you just have to take it on faith that Christian is awesome. Right, Christian?
I try.
Take it on faith. All right. Well, I'm glad he's here today. Jesse's there. Jesse probably is at the convenience store getting the lottery ticket and watching us at the same time. Probably a true statement. All right. I'm an in-houser. Watching other people work in FileMaker is so worth it. It makes me confident in solving with FileMaker. Yeah. Okay. So Jesse, you're happier now. So then I go to Claris and say that I have +5 Jesse happy points, and then they should do what I say. They're like, "What's a Jesse happy point? How do we justify that?" I believe in what you say, Jesse, but the bean counters, as we refer to them some places, bean counters only care about ROI. That's all they care about. So that's a trick. How do you quantify that?
I appreciate that Jessie insists that her happy points are worth millions.
I missed that. Well, actually, to be honest with you, if I didn't believe all of your success was important and it was valuable, we wouldn't do this. But I know that I know it's important. I know it exists, and I can't prove anything. Welcome to the chair, the captain's chair that Richard sits in. It's like, yeah, we're doing the world, we're helping the world, we're helping people be efficient, saving businesses and all this sort of stuff. How do you know? I'm confident that Jesse's happy. Right, seriously, it's in some cases it's nearly impossible, but if you're building a solution for someone and you have a before and after snapshot of their operation, please document it. Feel free to share it with me. I could at least talk about it on the show. That would be great. So, all right, Christian, good job.
I dig it. Did I get rich from that?
Yeah, I'll send you 10 grand, no problem. All right, everyone, see ya.